I have just learned about the most horrifying scandal to ever hit the Dungeons & Dragons community, and this will certainly ruin your life just as surely as it will be the end of Dungeons & Dragons forever. That's right, clickbait fans, we're going to examine the most outrageous scandals to ever hit Dungeons & Dragons that will absolutely 100% bring about the end of D&D. Dungeons & Dragons will not survive these scandals, and we might as well all pack it up and learn a new hobby. I don't want to alienate anyone or go too negative because this video is itself in protest to negativity and fear-mongering. I'm hoping this video can help provide you with some perspective and background about huge Dungeons & Dragons scandals that will end the game forever. And also, please, for the sake of my sanity, please leave your political rants and buzzwords out of the comments. This isn't about politics, so don't try to make us so. If you're new here, my name is Atten, and this is a channel dedicated to our love of tabletop role-playing games. And so now, without further delay, let's dive in. The year is 1975, and TSR co-founder Don Kay, the lifelong friend of Dungeons & Dragons co-creator Gary Gygax, has tragically died at just 36 years of age from a massive heart attack. Don Kay was the co-founder of Tactical Studies Rules, the company that publishes Dungeons & Dragons, and there is absolutely no way this game will survive. This is the end of Dungeons & Dragons forever. The year is 1976, and D&D's co-creator Dave Arneson has just been pushed out of TSR. He will no longer be involved with the creation and development of Dungeons & Dragons. This is the worst scandal imaginable, and it is absolutely going to be the death of Dungeons & Dragons. The year is 1979, and James Dallas Egbert, an avid player of Dungeons & Dragons, has just vanished from his college dorm room. He left behind a bizarre suicide note, which can only mean one thing. He is a victim of fantasy role-playing games. As the media at the time so correctly reported after thorough investigations that were in no way exaggerated, Dungeons & Dragons is a bizarre and secretive cult, which players could only join by invitation. There could be no question that playing Dungeons & Dragons was responsible for him going into those steam tunnels where he hoped to live out his fantasies. In fact, it was the very credible private detective and author William Deere that promoted and pushed that narrative into national media, suggesting Egbert may have entered the tunnels to play a live-action version of the game. Deere's theory was so reasonable and bulletproof that the national media picked up the story. This resulted in a huge scandal concerning the obvious detrimental psychological effects of role-playing games. You just can't ignore this. With so much truth about Dungeons & Dragons coming into the public eye, it will be the end of D&D forever. D&D is never going to survive this. The year is now 1980, and James Dallas Egbert is once again in the news. After having gone missing for several weeks a year earlier, he has now taken his own life from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. He was a bright young man with a promising future, but he was also seduced by the evil of Dungeons & Dragons, and his death is undeniably a terrible consequence of having entered the all-consuming satanic world of Dungeons & Dragons. There is just no way any reasonable person could possibly blame his troubles on pre-existing mental illness, and there is no way Dungeons & Dragons will ever rebound from this. We are absolutely facing the end of our hobby for forever. The year is 1981. And the completely fact-based and truthful novel Mazes and Monsters is first published. This book was so thoroughly researched and based in irrefutable science that 4 years later, in 1985, psychiatrist and anti-television violence activist Thomas Radecki of the National Coalition on Television Violence cited a fictitious letter written by a character in this novel as proof that D&D had caused the death of gamers. This scandal hits so hard. After such a seemingly endless flood of negative press and truth-tellers making their voices heard, revealing the horrors destined to befall all of those who play Dungeons & Dragons, there is absolutely no way D&D will survive, and this is beyond a shadow of a doubt the end of Dungeons & Dragons. The year is 1982, and Irving Lee Pulling has tragically died by suicide at the age of 17. Irving was a loyal fan of tabletop role-playing games, and this devastating tragedy is absolutely the result of having been seduced by the demonic forces which dominate Dungeons & Dragons. Nobody could possibly deny these irrefutable facts. This will finally be the end of Dungeons & Dragons, which requires nothing less than our immortal souls freely sacrificed to the Dark Prince Lucifer. At last, the entire world will finally understand that participating in a game of Dungeons & Dragons makes you beholden to and a servant of Satan. There is absolutely no way Dungeons & Dragons will ever survive such a huge scandal as this. Again, the year is 1982. Procter & Gamble, a company already facing harsh accusations of diabolic satanic allegiances, is one of several entities involved in producing the made-for-television movie Mazes and Monsters, starring a young Tom Hanks. This 100-minute-long TV special sought to expose the truth and dangers inherent in all fantasy role-playing games such as Dungeons & Dragons. There can be no doubt now that this major TV event will be the final nail in the coffin, exposing at last the harsh reality that if you allow your children to play D&D, they would try to escape their mortal existence and attempt to end their life. Because every incident involving teen suicide is never the fault of poor mental health and other related factors. Dungeons & Dragons will be dead forever. And now Dungeons & Dragons is being exposed as a loaded weapon held to the head of every participant in the hobby. This scandal is so enormous now that we are only a few days away from the final downfall and end of Dungeons & Dragons. The year is now 1983, and Patricia Pulling, mother of Irving Lee Pulling, has founded the advocacy group BAD, Bothered About Dungeons & Dragons, which is determined to enlighten the whole world to the fact that Dungeons & Dragons promotes demonology, witchcraft, voodoo, murder, rape, blasphemy, suicide, assassination, insanity, sex perversion, homosexuality, prostitution, satanic-type rituals, gambling, barbarism, cannibalism, sadism, desecration, demon summoning, necromantics, divination, and other teachings,
intent on bringing about the end of civilization as we know it.
Oh, this is really bad, folks. With a scandal this immense and so well-founded in undeniable facts, there is just no way Dungeons & Dragons could possibly ever survive. The year is 1984, and private investigator William Deere, who had previously promoted conspiracies relating to the disappearance of James Dallas Egbert, he's written a book. This exposes the truth about the danger of Dungeons & Dragons. This book is titled The Dungeon Master: The Disappearance of James Dallas Egbert. His book, which in no way sought to profit off of the media hype and false narrative around Egbert's tragic suicide, finally exposes the truth. This is certainly the end of Dungeons & Dragons, and with such high journalistic standards as those found in this book, there is no way D&D will ever survive. The year is now 1985, and can you believe it? The very popular television show 60 Minutes has poured more fuel on the fire by airing a hard-hitting, fact-based special which in no way is a knee-jerk reactionary hit piece promoting bad science and bad statistics. This journalistic masterpiece reveals the unmistakable and undeniable link between murder, suicide, and Dungeons & Dragons. I know I've said it before, folks, but this really is the end. There's just no way back from this. This is the end of Dungeons & Dragons as we know it. We might as well sell all our books and take up a nice, non-controversial hobby that doesn't require us to kill ourselves or murder our friends the way D&D demands from us. And now the unthinkable has happened. We will never get a new edition of Dungeons & Dragons. The year is 1986, and D&D co-creator, a man who for years has been the face of D&D, Gary Gygax, our favorite dungeon master, has been completely pushed out of TSR, the company he helped create, and he will no longer be involved with the development and creation of Dungeons & Dragons. This means the long-awaited second edition of Advanced Dungeons & Dragons will never happen. And this is without a doubt the last straw that will forever kill our game. It is now 1988, and we are on the edge of our seats, awaiting Dungeons & Dragons to be pulled from the store shelves. A terrible murder in Washington, North Carolina, involving, you guessed it, members of a Dungeons & Dragons gaming group, has come into public notice. So twisted and tainted by the evil of D&D, these murderers were found to have had a map in the style of those used in D&D adventures, drawn out depicting the victim's house. After this tragedy, it was the brave efforts of true crime authors Joe McGinnis and Jerry Bledsoe to inform the world of the influence role-playing games had in provoking the murders, correctly pointing out that the primary killer had been influenced by and drunk with power granted to him as a dungeon master. Bledsoe's book, called Blood Games, was made into a 1992 TV movie. The same year, McGinnis's book was adapted into a two-part TV miniseries, Cruel Doubt. Both of those made-for-television films depicted Dungeons & Dragons handbooks with artwork doctored to imply that they had inspired the murder. As you can see from all of these scandals, the end of Dungeons & Dragons is now a certainty, and it is only a matter of days before you will no longer be capable of playing D&D. The year is now 1989, and the second edition of Advanced Dungeons & Dragons has been released. Fortunately, TSR gave in to, decided to protect us, those of us who play D&D, by removing horrible and naughty words like demon or devil. They also removed a significant number of other images and words from the game that might tempt players into selling their eternal souls to Satan. And thank goodness, those naughty words were certainly the source of so much evil in the world. But could censoring naughty words really save Dungeons & Dragons? Could giving in to reactionary forces that sought only to inflict harm on D&D prevent D&D from being destroyed? Or was the act of bowing to those who sought only to find controversy where none existed be what finally killed Dungeons & Dragons? The 90s were a pretty bad decade for D&D. TSR had managed to unnecessarily alienate a lot of their own players by giving in to extremist views and criticisms from those with their own agendas who weren't even associated with the game. Things only went downhill from there, until finally in 1997, Wizards of the Coast purchased the financially struggling TSR. For clarity, TSR had been suffering from a multitude of financial problems stemming from mismanagement and abuse of company funds. But trying to pander to those looking only to bring an end to D&D never helped them. And now with D&D owned by Wizards of the Coast, we were left to ask, how can a company that made their fortunes on a card game ever be trusted with Dungeons & Dragons? Certainly, this was truly the end of D&D. Now, frankly, I could keep going on like this for hours. We could talk about the Blooms, we could talk about Gary's activities in Hollywood. Ever since its creation in 1974, D&D has faced scandal after scandal, and each one was greater than those that came before it. Each scandal was sure to be the end of D&D. These are just my thoughts on the topic. I only want to spend my time sharing positive, helpful advice with you about this game that I love so much. Don't allow negativity and reactionary madness to consume you. We play D&D to have fun. Embrace the parts you enjoy, ignore the rest. I hope this video has been useful to you, and I thank you for showing your support by liking the video and letting me know in the comments what you think. Please subscribe and turn on notifications if this is your first time here, so you don't miss future uploads. Thank you so much for watching. It is so obvious and undeniable that the people who make this game absolutely hate us, and nothing could ever possibly save Dungeons & Dragons from being destroyed forever.